Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today is officially the first video of the Rebuild Like a Nerd series, the videos where I will take an existing home in The Sims 4 and rebuild it in the most nerdy, painfully accurate, little bit obsessive way. I thought the Pancakes would be a great place to start as everyone knows them, half of us love them, and nobody likes their house. For starters, let's take a look and see the identifiable factors we have to work with. I'm fine with ignoring a few of these as we narrow down which house style we will be building ultimately, as I don't think the original designers put that much thought into it, but we'll try to keep as much of the original structure, shape, and vibe as possible. The most obvious sort of feature to me is the asymmetrical facade that includes this double deck and the slightly protruding second story element here. We also have a mid-height foundation, tall windows, painted door frames, and painted turned columns, as well as a painted fence, and the second level deck is covered. The roof is a low to mid pitch, and in the backyard we have another 2-level deck, again with the same columns and painted railings and everything, and a little bit of a garden as well. Now if we look inside the house, we have a centralized hallway with a dining and kitchen located at the back, and a massive living space. And upstairs is where we find the bedrooms. There is a little bit of a hallway here, but the stairs are incredibly wide, so there's really not much room up here for a hallway right now, and aside from that, it's just bedrooms and bathrooms. With all this in mind, I took to the internet to first figure out where Willow Creek is based on, which turns out to be New Orleans, which I will pronounce a million different ways in this video, and I expect to be roasted for each and every one of those. From there, I started searching popular New Orleans type architecture, and eventually, to cut down my hours of research to just a few seconds for you guys, found this historic home in New Orleans. I appreciated how many similarities this particular home had with the one that we're working with today, including that protruding second layer. We've got the painted turned columns. Now technically this home is a Queen Anne home, and I'm going to be going more in the Eastlake direction with the Pancakes home today, because even though it has a ton of overlap, and honestly the Eastlake and Queen Anne overlap a lot anyway, there are other homes in Willow Creek that more directly suit the Queen Anne style, so I think that it'll be best to try and keep hold of more of the angles and the tall rectangular windows, as opposed to the octagonal towers, rounded towers, and more ornate windows that you see in the Queen Anne, as we'll get to those in later videos in this series. Now my goal with our rebuild today is to have this home look as close to the original house as possible. It's not going to be some overwhelming rebuild where it's going to look completely different, but it will definitely be a leveled up version with much more accuracy to the intended style, or what I think the intended style was supposed to be, and just overall better planning and so on. So that's enough information to get going. Let's start building. Now, even though I want this home to look as similar as possible, we are still going to be starting from scratch. Alright, let's start out with the front of the home. I'm actually going to keep largely the same layout, so I am going to do our little dining room first, which is about 5 by 6, and an equally sized kitchen behind that. It is classic in Victorian homes to have the kitchen at the back of the home, so I don't mind keeping that there. Next up, I am actually going to add a front sort of entry vestibule, which was not present in the original build, but I think would suit the style a lot better. And this area is mostly going to be a hallway with a small sort of back vestibule there, and a little half bath under the stairs. Next is the massive living space, which again, I don't really mind keeping. It's just going to be improved a bit, including a bay window area there. I think that that will really add a lot to the build. Before, this went all the way flush with this wall, but I think that since we're going to have another room sticking out atop of it, like this, it's just going to look a little bit better that way. I'm going to add my deck pieces and start with pretty much just tracing the exact same footprint as the floor below. Before I go too far, I do want to add the stairs. Now traditionally in a Victorian home, the stairs would be either in a front entry area or in back by the kitchen, possibly both if it's a large enough home, which this one is not. So I opted for in the back by the kitchen. And I'm also going to change this space to include more of a hallway splitting up the bedrooms. So have one bedroom and ensuite here, another bedroom here, and a final bedroom with an ensuite in the back, and this will become that family bathroom. So the family bathroom that did start over here, we've pretty much moved over here. Bob gets an ensuite, Eliza gets an ensuite, and there's an additional bedroom should they choose to have children or whatever. Now I just have to add the double layered deck at the back, raise up the foundation, and there's the shell done. Now of course we do need a roof. That is kind of an important thing. I don't know if any of you saw it, but James Turner recently did a video where he sort of weirdly moved into the Pancakes attic with his sim, which was interesting. I thought about adding an attic space and a third level, but then I remembered that the goal of this series is to improve on the original design, not just completely change it. So I did not. So there's the start of our roofing. Now I want to talk about how we're going to change these, the second level decks. In the original, which I can put on screen real quick here, they were surrounded by railings and had flat roof on top. And the flat roof actually made me wonder if this wasn't supposed to be some sort of Greek revival style, and that protruding second story bit over the front door was not in fact supposed to be like a weird pediment sort of thing. But I looked at the columns again, which are of course turned wood and painted, and the base game did have Greek columns, so I was like, you know what, if they're going for Greek, they would have gone wholeheartedly into the Greek and actually used the Greek columns like they did in other builds, but they didn't. So I just removed all of the Greek influence, all of the neoclassical influence, and we're just going to go straight up Victorian. A very simplified version, for sure. I don't want to add too many bells and whistles here, you know, keeping with the original style, but a more folksy Victorian is what we're running with, not the Greek. So with all that being said, let's talk about how we're doing the decks here. I'm actually going to be sort of sinking them into a roof. So I'm raising this deck by one platform level, and I'm going to add little roof pieces around it. This is really common in a lot of the Victorian homes to have the second level have little walkout areas sort of into the roof. So that's the style I'm going with here. And I don't think I've plugged it yet, so I will now. If you're interested in learning more about the Queen Anne style or a handful of other Victorians, and you haven't already, I highly recommend checking out my entire Build Like a Nerd playlist, which I will link at the end of this video. There are two versions of the playlist currently. There's the one in the release order as well as one in chronological order, so you can sort of get a better idea of when these homes were created in reference to one another. That wall is not supposed to be there. But that whole series has been a lot of fun, and I look forward to taking what I learned from doing those videos and applying them to creating better homes for the beloved townies of The Sims 4. I want these half walls to be just tall enough for the trim to be peeking over the roof so that we can paint it and it'll look nice. I think that's good, and then I'm going to actually lower these back down to the base level. Now the reason I wanted this platform here is because it hides the edges of the eaves of the roof really nicely, and I can grab some platform trim and then take the high tide exterior trim in that same sort of blue tone and apply it all throughout there. And I just think that gives a nice separation. Grab the half wall trim while we're here in that same bluish color. Isn't that fun? And of course we can cover this as well. Now I've gone back and forth on using the half gabled or the half hipped. I like the half hipped better, so I'm going to stick with that one. But if you're building along or decide you hate it and want to change it later, I won't be offended at all. And the last little piece of roof we have to do is this octagon piece here. Now when I was doing the pre-build, it was clipping in a bit, which is never fun. So I'm going to use these roof pieces, which are less prone to clipping in, to sort of do a little fake octagon roof thing. There, no roof clipping, fantastic. I believe the original shingles were these, which I don't mind at all, so we'll go ahead and use those. As well as grab the original roof trim, which was this one, the beveled out roof trim in that weird blue color. I'm not sure which lighting is best to use for this lot, so that might change a little bit as we go, but I do want to highlight the front because we'll finish this up, then do the windows, siding and everything, and then we will be moving inside and talking about the inside as well. So, how we're sitting right now though, looking pretty good. I am going to add the brick trim or foundation and grab those same turned and painted columns. And here's a question for you guys. Would you like to see these packs limited when I do these builds? Like I'll be doing this one with just the base game today, but would you like to see the other future homes be rebuilt with just the world packs? Would you like to see them with all the packs? Does it matter on which style we're trying to recreate? Let me know if you have any feedback about that. I will also be using the same front door, but I'm going to change it out to be the white trim with the sort of blue paint instead of the blue trim with the white paint on the door. And I'm going to use this window set. I do have move objects on for this build, and I'm using that at my full advantage with the window placement. With the overlapping shutters, which is another thing that you'll see pretty commonly, trying to get the windows to line up with some of the windows below them. And then I'll just use a small glass door. I decided to go for these windows just because I appreciated how much larger they were. Again, trying to go with that slightly decorated but not too ornate style. Speaking of, I'm also adding spandrels, which I don't remember if the original home had, but I can hold Alt to place them only precisely where I want them to be, which will let me have an arch sort of over the front door, but place this around the rest of it. And I just think that's a nice little decorative detail. One of the more Victorian elements that the original home was missing. Victorian homes did tend to be fairly heavily windowed, so I'm going to go ahead and, I don't think go overboard is the right term, but I'm definitely going to add plenty of windows, however they're going to fit best without too much clipping. Now I believe the original siding was this one, the wide siding in kind of a darker color, and I'd rather brighten it up a little bit, so I'm actually going to switch over to the more narrow siding and actually paint the house over in white. Now, traditionally the Victorian home would pretty much have a like big vibrant bold color. However, the original home did not have a vibrant bold color, and Eliza strikes me as someone who doesn't care all that much about maintaining the historical integrity of the home. So also looking at my images, I realize that this is pitched way too low in comparison to the original, so I'm just going to pitch that up a little bit. With that though, I think we can start moving inside and talking about how we're going to finalize and furnish the interior. Now, one thing the Pancakes do have to their advantage with me building their home is how much more stuff is in the base game now than was when their home was originally built. So they actually have the advantage of these tiny little lights to actually light things up, which is pretty nice for them. The original floor was kind of mid-tone, but I'm going to go with darker. And moving room to room, we could either use some of these arches or go with the double glass doors. I do wish that these were a little taller, but they're not. And just go through and add doors everywhere, as they are tremendously handy. Fantastic invention. Now, I would like to add some fireplaces. Traditionally in the Queen Anne and Eastlake Victorian home styles, the fireplaces would be located on interior walls as opposed to exterior, which is why you don't often see chimney columns going up the side of the homes. But we can still add one on the roof here. Now, it does look like they did keep some of the historical elements, like the paneling on the walls and some of the wallpaper. I think this is the wallpaper that was in the hallway originally, which I don't hate. So we can go ahead and have that be the main wallpaper for the floor. I may go in and change some of it, but it's nice to just have sort of a base down to begin with. However, for upstairs, I think I'd like to move more in the wallpaper direction. We can let Eliza keep her pink though, and we'll give Bob this sort of bluish gray. I'm going to do this room gray as well, as whether or not to have a child is sort of a gray area in their relationship, I believe, as far as their story goes. Let's start over here in the dining room for furnishing. Now, I'm not necessarily interested in keeping all of the original furniture, and again, I might switch out some of the wallpaper as we go along as well, but I definitely want to keep it slightly, why are these windows not the same height? Slightly more in the old-fashioned direction, with some more modern elements as well. And given how small the home is, I don't think we need an 8-seater table. I think 6 will be just fine. We'll grab a nice hanging light fixture, which the game still doesn't have a whole ton of great options for in the base game, which is a bit of a bummer. I would love to see them add some more like hanging lights for actual tall and medium wall heights and not just the normal one. And we'll grab a nice rug as well. Now, this brocade rug was originally what was in the living area. A different color though, but I think I like it better in the dining room. It would also make more sense to have a dining room wall that had full paneling on the lower half to protect the wall from scrapes and scratches from the chairs and whatnot. However, I will respect their desire to maintain the upper paneling or molding or whatever detail, and we'll go with this one. Now, I would love to add some curtains that would make sense for the space, but again, we just don't really have any options that are going to be tall enough, and blinds don't really suit either. We can pull in some more of the gold from the light fixture in a piece of art above the fireplace though. And the original dining space did have a hutch, so I think I'd like to pull one of those in as well. I never remember where they are though. There are some. The dining room does definitely still feel a little bit empty, but overall I think that it's a better layout than before, and we pulled in some more historical elements, like having the fireplace on an inside wall, adjusting the windows a bit, and adding the wallpaper that has the paneling on the bottom. Now, moving on to the kitchen, I would like to add some tile to the walls, and just had it. This one actually has trim that matches the wallpaper we're already using. Is it the most historically accurate tile? No. But I think it'll add more kitchen-ness to the kitchen. And of course, the walls that aren't going to have kitchen equipment on them, we can just leave at the normal sort of basic wallpaper that we're already using in the rest of the house. As usual, I'm going to be using the escargot counter. And I do not want it to run into the windows, so I'll use this space for the trash can. But I think we can use a decent stove and fridge set. Options at this point would be either a kitchen table or an island. I think I'm going to go with just a small island, just to give a little bit more kitchen prep space. Plus, I never use these hanging pots and pans things, and I think that'd be really fun to put in this kitchen since I believe Bob is a chef. Again, I could be wrong on a lot of this stuff. I haven't really played with this household much before, but I believe Bob is a chef. I'm going to give him some nice pots and pans to cook in this kitchen with, and just a couple of basic stools. I was thinking about what to put over here, but then I remembered you don't actually have to have the bar facing you for it to work. It can be facing away because your sim just needs to access this little spot right here. So we could actually put a little bar here, maybe not this one, And I think that'll help with the like mixology skill and everything. Definitely a project that got put in, but that's okay. And now let's talk about how to break up this massive living room. I think I'm going to start with a rug in the middle here to sort of pull in a seating area, and then we'll probably do like a chest table and maybe a little office space over here. I think this is the couch that was originally in here, definitely more of the contemporary direction, but that's okay. We can mix in some contemporary. Add the complimentary love seat over on this side, and maybe we'll pull in some of those more fancy Victorian elements elsewhere. It's still quite large and spaced out, but I think that actually having all the furniture on the rug is making this area feel a little bit more cozy. We have a designated office space, a chest table instead of just a random normal table. You could probably fit a baby grand in here if you wanted to, but I don't think that quite suits the house. I've just realized this would actually be a perfect place to put one of these grandfather clocks that I never use. Yay! So moving back upstairs, what things does Eliza expect to have in her room? We have her bed, of course, and a couple of side tables. Now it looks like they originally just filled up her room with some additional seating and everything, but I think a little vanity over by the window would be really nice. That looks like she had a couple of these chairs. These spaces feel so empty, but then I have to remind myself I am rebuilding an EA original, and big and empty is kinda half their style. Now for Bob's bedroom, he definitely has a lot of the more contemporary style in there, as well as some workout equipment, so we'll make sure we get him all of that back. I think this is the bed he has, but we are going to get him a better one, because that one is bad. Maybe this one. I think we got all of the essentials back in there. And here's the deal. For this room, I'm just going to leave it empty. I thought about making it a nursery, but then the base game update was announced, and I don't really see much point in going through and making it a nursery now if in just a few days we're going to have a ton of new nursery stuff. So if you'd like to see me come back to this house and do a nursery for it and upload that as a room for you guys, if you'd like that, let me know. Otherwise, I'm just going to leave it there for now and finish up this bathroom. Now we do need an easel for this deck space for Eliza, and looks like there was a woodworking table initially on the front, but I'm going to move it back here instead since that front deck is no longer attached directly to Bob's room. I'll let him have this one. And I think I'll just leave this one blank for now. So here's where we are. Here's a reminder of where we started. Now before we move on to landscaping and finishing the yard and all of that stuff, if you haven't already, I would love it so much if you'd give this video a big old thumbs up. Also, I don't usually point this out, but these videos do take a lot of time. I'm going to put on screen how much time this video took to produce. That includes the pre-production, the research, the pre-build, the building, the recording, the editing, all of that stuff. So if you appreciate that I put however many hours this is into this video, it would mean so much to me if you would subscribe and come back for more. And with that update that I just mentioned, I do plan on streaming, so if you want to make sure that you're notified of that, make sure you turn on the bell, blah blah blah. Let's move on to landscaping. Now if we're going in the Queen Anne direction, we know that they loved flashy flowers, so I'm going to grab a little iron fence and just make a nice little flower garden right at the front here. I'll do this on either side, and we will add some landscaping to the backyard as well. But this is going to look remarkably similar to the landscaping that we did in the original Queen Anne video, which I'll link in the card here. You're more than welcome to go check that out. But I'm just going to grab a couple of flowers, kind of stick in the blue and green theme that we've been using, which is going to be pretty easy considering most plants are in fact green. The front porch did originally have some lights hanging from it, so I will grab some of those as well. I think it was this one. I don't mind having that, but I think I would also like an exterior light over here. Bring in some of that ironwork that was not only popular with the Queen Anne and Eastlake Victorian styles, but also New Orleans as a whole. I think I'd like to add a telescope out here. This isn't something that the Pancakes would have had access to originally. It was in a more recent update, but that's okay. They can have it. I also don't want to forget to add a trash bin, so I'll stick that out here as well, and a nice little bench. Now in the backyard, originally the builders actually had sort of landscaping around a back patio area, which was really interesting. However, I would rather have an actual fence, so I'm just going to use a privacy hedge to keep the same general idea, just a little bit easier to execute. Right, so we can have this come down into our little patio area, and something I thought would be fun to add would be an above ground pool, because pools were not released with the game originally, so in theory the Pancakes would have had to add one later on. So I think that would be fun. Aside from that, they just had a grill and some seating, and we'll add in some of that original flower bed idea as well. Just have to finish up with a little bit of terrain painting here, and that's how I would rebuild the Pancakes house. Here are some side-by-side comparisons. For the front, I really did try to keep as much of that original character as possible while also leveling it up a significant amount. The main change, honestly, that I made was that upper level deck area, and I just wanted to bring it a little bit more in the Victorian direction, make it look more intentional and interesting, and not just like decks sort of slapped onto a build. Inside, all things considered, the floor plan is pretty much the same. I did rearrange the bedrooms quite a bit. They are smaller now, but I don't think that's a bad thing. They are still quite large, and especially with neighborhood stories now, I think that adding an additional bedroom or two to builds is just the better way to go about it. The backyard still kept sort of that fenced in with hedges idea, except used an actual fence to allow for a gate, and gave them a pool, because they deserve a pool. But what do you guys think? Do you like this idea of taking classic Sims homes and just making them better versions of themselves? Most of the Pancakes rebuilding homes that I've seen have turned them either completely Victorian or completely suburban, and I wanted to try and walk the line of keeping what was good from the original, giving it a little bit more character and intention and stuff like that. And if you'd like to nominate the next townie family to get this sort of nerdy makeover of their home, you can do so in the Discord, which I will also link in the video description. Thanks so much for building with me today, and I look forward to building with you again very, very soon. Bye!